PC building is my default. But it wasn't always like this. Back in 2007, this was my PC. It barely ran Counter-Strike Source with its Pentium 4 and ATI 9250 GPU. And when I think about it, I didn't even like it. I remember going to my neighbor's house and seeing him get a Death Adder. It looked impossibly cool, and as soon as I got enough money, I bought one. It was such an improvement over my crappy office crap mouse that I started to enjoy gaming on the PC a lot more. Then one day, my neighbor bought a PC with an Nvidia 8800 GTX on it and showed me Crysis. And from then on, I was hooked. And 14 years later, this is my latest build. So if you're new around here, hi, maybe consider subscribing. We usually play with tech and try to make pretty videos about it, and there's always a hidden cat at the end of the video. So what more could you want? So, as you saw in the intro of the video, I was fortunate enough to find and afford an Nvidia RTX 3090, and even luckier to have paid under the retail price for it. The current specs of the system in its current form are a Ryzen 9 3900X, 32 gigs of G.Skill memory at 3666 MHz CL16, the RTX 3090, of course, and all this plugged into an Asus Crosshair 6 Hero that's still going strong since 2017 and powered by a Corsair AX86Ti. I also have an Asus Essence STX as an amplifier slash DAC for my Sennheiser HD6XX. It's almost 10 years old at this point, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Cooling this, I have the latest iteration of my custom loop. Version 1, over 3 years ago at this point, was with two EKPE 360mm radiators with soft transparent tubing and transparent fluid as well. After a while, the tubes got all murky and opaque, so after that I went with hard PETG tubing and these terrible fittings. I didn't know any better at the time, and the price was very enticing, but using push-in fittings for your entire hardline loop is a terrible idea. It's already pretty hard to make a custom hardline loop, but using these push-in fittings, the measurements have to be very precise, because if they aren't, you are going to be putting too much force on the O-rings and they will not seal. Trust me, I learned the hard way. I've had my share of accidents over the years because of these fittings and got tired of hardline tubing in general, so this time we went with a more sober look with a soft matte black tubing and some new screw-in fittings. And I think it looks fantastic. There's always things you can do better in a build like this, but I'm pretty happy with how it looks, and it being soft tubing, it's much easier to maintain and even update hardware. Things like swapping a CPU can be done without draining the entire loop, and that will definitely come in handy for future videos. But how does it perform, you might ask? Well, with specs like these, as you could expect, it pretty much demolishes anything it touches. I play on a 144Hz 1440p monitor, and even when setting Cyberpunk to the absolute max with DLSS set to quality mode, we still clear well above 60 FPS at all times. Another big game that I have installed on my machine is Red Dead Redemption 2, and as graphically demanding as it can be, you can crank it up to ultra and still expect averages of around 100 frames per second, so it's pretty much everything you could expect of it. And other esports titles like Apex Legends can be locked to 180 FPS to guarantee the maximum smoothness you can expect, and it will pretty much stay there 95% of the time. The rest of the time, it's not there because EA doesn't know how to make games, and the game came out very recently, so they still haven't had time to optimize it, of course. Other games that I'm also currently playing are F1 2020 and Borderlands 3, and in both of them, you can expect average frame rates that exceed the monitor's refresh rate, so the gaming experience is pretty much as good as it gets. All of this whilst staying extremely cool and quiet thanks to the 12 fans that max out at 1100 RPM. GPU never exceeds under any circumstance 45 degrees C in my 21 degrees room, and the CPU showed peaks of 70 to 75 degrees Celsius, which are pretty normal given how Ryzen regulates its power and temperature. I still find myself gravitating to the PS5 quite often because of its exclusive games, but if I'm given the choice between console or PC, I'ma choose PC. Productivity-wise, the 3090 shines with the 24GB of VRAM. I've never ran out of memory once in Resolve, even on large timelines filled with multiple stacking effects, and playback and render is as fast and as smooth as I've ever seen. I also host a Plex server for my family, and this much memory and performance makes it so that even if they're watching something that needs transcoding, I don't even notice a drop in performance. Now, if you were to ask me, do I regret buying a 3090? I don't. I mean, yes, it's very expensive and terrible value when compared to the 3080 and the 3070, but because of this entire stock issue, I couldn't really get a 3080 or 3070, and the extra memory has been much more useful than I initially expected in productivity apps, and that might even work as a motivation in order to explore some other areas of video production, like some 3D and animation, and bring that into these videos as sort of like a way to not feel as guilty about buying a GPU with 24GB of VRAM. But if you are in the market for a gaming GPU and you somehow find the 3080 or 3070, go with one of those because it's probably going to serve you better, and it's definitely a much better value. As you probably are used to seeing by now, this entire corner of my room is filled with tech, and I'm definitely going to be sharing that in more detail, some of the light setups, some of the tiny little things that I have done in this entire corner to make it what it is today in future videos. But for now, this is my desktop and this will be my PC for 2021, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. But you're here, but it's nothing about tech or computers or even an RTX 3090. Are you here for some Feline Action? And I'll surely show it to you. Hope you enjoyed the video, hope you stick around for future videos, and yeah, bye!